We'll open this meeting with a pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have prayer by Jeff O'Connor. Welcome.
Thanks for allowing me to.
Let's pray.
Thank you, God, for giving each of us another day, and I'm reminded that we're blessed to live freely in this country and in our community. And I thank you for these folks who serve on city council. It's not an easy job to be a community representative in public service, so I thank you for their efforts. And I just please give them the wisdom where needed and the humility and integrity to implement that wisdom. Love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Williams?
Here.
Councilor Burke?
Here.
Councilor Berger?
Here.
Councilor Culp?
Here.
Councilor Smith?
Here.
Councilor Taylor?
Here.
Councilor Zimmerman?
Here.
Roll call is complete, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Welcome everyone here tonight. Welcome those who are online. Glad to have, I was hoping for a little bigger crowd for Sydney's presentation, but we've got some people. So I will make the notice that City Hall will be closed next Monday because it is a federal holiday. So you might keep that in mind if you want to conduct any city business next week. So we'll move on to approved minutes for regular council meeting 1685 on September 15th. Did everyone get a chance to read those minutes?
Make a motion to approve City Council meeting minutes 1685.
Second.
Okay, are there any corrections or amendments? Anybody have any? I will point out on page 2, Melissa's last name's missing an E. Are there any public comments on the minutes? Any public comments on the minutes? Public comments? Then all in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Brings us to reports. First up is the city administrator's report, and he did put together a little packet with some visuals for us tonight, so that it made we could look at what he's saying and make it a little more sense.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, good evening. WWC Engineering just sent over the 90% complete for the draft engineering plan for the spoils pile. So we're going to be doing some finalizations on that. What we're trying to do is get it down to where the price point to actually build the parking lot and settling basin would match the grant. So what will happen is now we're hoping within the next month to get that. Once the plan's completed 100% there, we'll go over it and it'll be presented to the council, and at that time you'll have the option to authorize it or to not authorize the parking lot and settling basin up there. I can say I do like the plans compared to what we were looking at before. Phase 2 of Spruce Street reconstructions had a couple of issues. We had one with the engineering and one with concrete. Mike Fraser's coming in on Wednesday. We're going to sit down and discuss the progress, the expected completion date, and go over everything with Peggy and I. We had a meeting, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago now, with port attorneys and with Chris Noble. We wanted to ensure that all utility easements and road easements are taken care of, coming from Dawson Mill Road all the way back to the city property. Those are already in place, but now we're going to go forward as a city, and I'm going to see if we can get the easements from Spruce Street all the way down to Lincoln Boulevard with a 64-foot easement for just future planning purposes, just in case it ever changes over there.
And that is exhibit.
That is the first page on the map you'll see there. The blue is already in existence with the city, with Noble. The highlighted yellow is already in existence with the port property, and we're looking for that red line. And like I said, we're just trying to ensure that 50 or 60 years from now, 100 years from now, we've pre-planned out the area. The Reese Court water leaks, I know everybody's heard about it. If you flip to the colored map page for the council, you'll be able to see it. What happened was September 10th, leak was identified up there. One of the persons involved down below had contacted Justin Williams, our street supervisor, and there was water and sediment going down across the road on Cedar Street Extension up in there. So that was all identified. So Scott Thompson, the owner of the park, went up and he had that leak repaired, or we thought was repaired, on September 12th, and took the weekend off and thought everything's good. But then there was about 3 to 4 foot of land sloughed off, and the water started running out of the bank. It was running at about 2 gallons per minute, and it was heavily saturating the soil, so it was getting cracks, and you can see where it's sliding. Basically, the ground up there is made of about 8 or 9 foot of solid clay, and then it goes straight into 20 foot plus of sand. So we're not sure how long the water leaked in the sand before it came up through the clay to be identified. So on September 16th, we went ahead and we tried to see, since we thought the leaks were repaired, if we could isolate the water mains up in the area to see if that would stop the water from coming out or slow it down. It did not. Also at that time, Scott Thompson hired TCI, and they dug a big trench along the bank to see if we couldn't find where more water was infiltrating. Those all came up dry. So on the 17th, they dug another big trench because a former water worker thought he believed there was a phantom line that he remembered. So they dug this huge trench up there looking to see if there's a line where we didn't know where it was. That was also nothing, so it's still pumping out at 2 gallons a minute. So at that time, Scott Thompson found some old fence posts for like chain link fence, put it in the hole, packed it with clay, and then we shifted the water to divert it into the trees because it's more stable ground over in there, which it did help out with that. Then Scott brought in a leak detector. He listened to leaks all over and we couldn't find them. The water was still running out at that time. So the leak detector did find a city main, water main up there. It was unidentified. It wasn't on any maps. Nobody knew it existed. So just to make sure our main was good, the streets crew went ahead, went up, and we uncovered that whole main. Looking at it, is it our leaks? And it was not the main leaking, but we found a Frankenstein of a debacle where they had a manifold built with 5 different outlets. I think is the total count on that one. So at that time also, because the ground was loading up, he got some old fire hoses. We took it down the hill just into the creek bank. So at that time it was leaking about 1.5 gallons per minute. So it's starting to decrease and everything, but we're getting the water off of that bank so it doesn't slip anymore. Monday, September 29th, went up there again trenching for more leaks on number 1. It went down to 1.6 gallons. And it was decided then that Scott would run all new lines to abandon all that old stuff, and we went ahead and abandoned that whole chunk of main that was identified. So the streets crew went up and put a new corner in, all new quart valves, so now we've got all new curb stops and meter pits in that area. For the 2 other houses, we found those lines and one of them broke, just like the other valve broke that we had to remove. And it was feeding a spigot that wasn't metered and a trailer. The other line, we traced it back to the bank. It was feeding a trailer, a hose bib, and 2 trailers over, it was feeding another spigot that was unmetered. So now we got curb stops and meter pits up on that. And that slowed it down to 1 gallon every minute and 10 seconds. We also isolated, there was an old Bowen ranch up there with a 2-inch water service line heading out there that somehow fed down to a trailer, so the city went up after those lines and we capped that off. So we're isolating any leak that could have been going down over that hill. We thought we had everything whipped, and then we got a call and there was more leaks. There was 3 more leaks out there, so that's leaks number 2 that are on the map. So we identified, found those. Those have now 3 brand new lines going to it. And then, what was it, Saturday, leak number 3 popped up. And they're trying to get that figured out. And if you look at the top of that map, leak 4, this morning we went up there and there's a trailer and there was a 2-inch service line going back to feed trailers, and somewhere, somehow, it splits into 3 separate lines. So Scott is doing everything in his power to take care of that, the trailer court and the water issues up there. And as of this morning, it was taking 1 minute and 30 seconds to get a gallon. So what we believe has happened is residual water in the sand layer, and it's just slowly sleeping out. And if there was tens of thousands of gallons, it might take quite a while for it to drain out. But Scott is still monitoring that. So that's what's going on up there, and he's got a plan to go ahead and replace the other lines now, but he's got to get some more revenue coming in before he can do that. So I feel confident now that the risk of that big bank sloughing and falling down and covering the road or going into the creek, I don't think that's there anymore. And I've been, Lane Crawford lives at the bottom, an older gentleman. I've been briefing him every couple of days to make sure he knows he's all right. So that's what's going on up at the Reese Court, because I know everybody's been talking about it, and I've heard it's on Facebook. The one thing I like to point out is that this has been owned by multiple owners, and nobody's ever put the money into upgrading the infrastructure because you can't see it. And that's kind of where the city's at. And I'm just very thankful that we have a mayor and a council that approve those rate increases so we can start bringing in the money that we need to keep our system healthy. The next page, if you look in there, this one's a humdinger. Justin, the guy, went up there and looked. Our lower reservoir, which our dam holds the majority of the water that comes down into the lower reservoir, and that's where it comes down into our plant. The water, instead of going over the spillway now, is going around it. There's always been a little bit, but now it's gotten really bad. You go up there and look at the riprap, and it's actually caving in where the sediment's getting washed away from it. That would be the red line on the colored one. So we went up to investigate it, and there's an old retaining wall in there. And what happened, there's a diagram of it on there. There's cracks. Somebody went in years ago and put a cap over it and then put concrete down where there's large cracks in it. So we just went ahead and stirred up some sediment, and it's a vortex getting sunk down into it. So this one is on a risk of catastrophic failure by spring. So we had Andy went up there, Justin went up there, and we had a Noble guy go up there with us, and we're putting together an emergency fix right now. It's going to be a
long-term temporary solution.
Temporary solution. And this is exactly why we have to bring in this funding. And then Chuck remembered years ago that they injected green dye, and it was coming out on the far side of the spillway. So this has had a Band-Aid on it for at least 20 years. So the problem is, if you look at the next page, you'll see this is going to be part of our preliminary engine report. And without replacing that knee wall, this project was already looking at $3.8 million. Well, what's going to happen is we can get grants worth $1.1 to $1.2 million. Everything else is on the city. So I'm going to be sitting down with Nicole Redisky. She's a TD&H engineer working on the preliminary engineer report. I'm going to get Andy and Fraser, and we're going to sit down and see if we can't break this into chunks. Because now with the usage rate coming in for the water, we're hoping to be able to just take care of this sequentially within the next 5 to 10 years. But we've got to get out of this catastrophic mode we're in right now, because this is getting uglier by the day. But we are on it, and I already let the chief of police know I'm going to be looking at trying to figure out how much water is there and how, if it came down through the valley, how it would affect all the residents. But it's not near that point right now. We're going to get on it before that. Part of it is we're going to look at injecting some type of silicone into the cracks, and we might have to drill down into it and pump bentonite, which is really sticky clay, into it, or a concrete slurry. But we have to make it to where it's okay. There's no VOCs or anything that can contaminate the drinking water. So that's the update on that one. I do have some good news. We had our engineer Andy come in and went up to the filtration tanks at the water treatment plant. And they were looking at $10 to $15 million. They wanted to blow out the wall and to replace all of them. And I've been fighting for years to say, no, we can fix what we have and give us another 30, 40 years. I walked through there with them, and he agrees. And he's already got a guy we're getting lined up to come in to give us actual, no kidding, he's a specialist, to say, yep, this is what it will cost. And again, this is where the capital improvement plan comes in. Depending on the lower reservoir, I'm hoping to do like a tank a year throughout the next few years and get ahead of this before it blows out. So that's one of the good things there, but it's all going to depend on the lower reservoir costs. The last thing is I just want to thank the mayor and the council that were in here. That was a big decision to raise the rates that we had to do. just like it's a big decision for Scott or for any business to do that. And it took guts, and I'm glad they had it. And that's my report, Madam Mayor and Council, unless there's any questions.
Well, I know that was a lot of information. Does any council members have any questions? Because it kind of rattled through a lot of stuff. Anybody?
I have a question. Thank you for this report. Someone mentioned to me that there's still an issue over in the Napa at the location leaking. No?
At Napa?
Yeah. Somewhere 6th Street, Commerce. No. Okay.
I never heard that. There's no water mains in that area. It's all irrigation water.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, then move on to streets report. Mr. Williams?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. So last month, September, we've been busy. We've had 3 water main leaks, 2 on 6th Street and 1 on Cabot Heights Road. Also, we had 1 leaking valve that was removed and relocated. We've been jetting and visually inspecting sewer mains around town. We discovered lots of grease in Utah main from Highway 2 headed north. Actually had our main restricted, and when it cleared, it proceeded to plug 2 manholes downstream. We were able to remove the big chunks and the smaller chunks fast, which ended up wreaking havoc with the wastewater treatment plant. Also, we've been finding quite a few root balls and lots of sediment in the main in 4th Street, and all that was removed. So all these clay tile mains, they're 3-foot sections. Let's find their way in and cause restrictions in the main, so we've been pretty busy dealing with those. Cemetery digs for the month of September. We had 2 fulls, 3 pre-mains, and 1 disinterment. The crew attended a CPR refresher course, been hauling wastewater treatment plant waste to dump. Been sweeping around town trying to pick away at the fallen leaves and other debris that's making it into the roadway. Been patching potholes and water main repair locations. Made a storm sewer repair on Spruce in Utah. Had a fractured concrete pipe that was allowing water to pour out of it and then causing settling in the roadbed. We've been busy helping out restore, like Sam said, where we can to alleviate a portion of water. Main that was in poor shape. With how that was configured. We've also placed 42 hydrant flags for better visibility for our hydrants in poor weather conditions. And just a reminder, seasonal ordinances start November 1st. As a reminder about city street obstructions, boats, campers, utility trailers, junk cars, basketball hoops, etc. Please be helpful to remove these obstructions out of the city right away so we can do a thorough job plowing and not have to plow around these obstructions. If we all do our part, then everyone will be happy. That's all I got. Any questions?
Thank you.
I got a quick question, Justin. Sure. You're talking about the grease buildups in the water, the sewer line there. Your camera might have their way of saying this is roughly where the grease stops, starts here, or do we got an idea what's happening there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Perfect.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we're looking when we get the cameras in, and we do exactly that here. We look exactly where it's coming from, and some other possible things. But yeah, when I get that information put together, I forward it on to him, and then he takes off with it.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Councilman Taylor, we know where it's coming from now, and they're going to be getting a follow the ordinance or lose your water and sewer services letter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Police report.
Mayor, Council, September was a very busy month for us, and we were excited about it. This year we had 335 cases compared to last year's 182. And then last month we had 301 calls for service. And those calls for service included 4 assault cases, 15 disturbances, 7 threatening calls, 6 thefts, 2 mental health calls, 1 vagrancy, 1 welfare check, 7 public assists, 14 911 calls, 4 juvenile problems, 20 walkthroughs, 24 city ordinances, 27 suspicious people or vehicles, 9 crashes, 5 DUIs, and 127 traffic stops. So officers were out there very active. We had a busy month, which was great for our new officers, gave them lots of experience to interact with the public under that supervised portion of their training. Officer Smart has officially finished his field training, so he's now on his own and doing great. And Officer Stephenson is scheduled to finish this month. So then we'll have all of our officers fully trained and out in the public. So we're really excited about that. Also last month I received a visit from the Department of Defense. They sent 2 representatives out from Michigan to visit with me regarding a program that provides law enforcement with pretty much any kind of supplies that the military uses. A lot of times this is used for getting like armored vehicles for SWAT teams and things like that. We were able to use that and actually get a dump truck for the street department. So all we have to do is go out to Fort Lewis with our street crew and our mechanic, double check that it's in good shape, and then we'll bring back an $88,000 dump truck, courtesy of the U.S. government. So we're pretty excited about that. It's a good program that we're excited to utilize to help not only support the police department, but also the other departments for the city. So it's a great opportunity. It's going to be destroyed or sold off, so we might as well get it for free. So like I said, the only thing it costs us is to go and pick it up. So, any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay. Leanne, do you have any finance report?
I do have
We'll be
a.
on next week.
Oh. I do have, thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Our fiscal year 26 budget has been accepted, so that's done until next year. And right now, currently, I've been working with the auditors to finalize our year so we can get ready to do our annual financial report, which is due December 31st, so that time comes quick. So we're working with that. I'm hoping to hear back from them this next week. They've sent me all their needs lists that I was able to give them this last week, and she's just working on the final issues with that. And then I've also received the needs list for the audit. So I'm hoping once this is done, working the audit, get her all done early. So cross my fingers. And that's my report.
And Diana will be gone next week.
Oh, and we will be gone next week for League of City and Town Conference in Billings. So anybody want to drive me?
Oh,
It's a long
I thought you were going to get a dump truck.
Well, we probably could. Where's that?
That one that's armored vehicle.
Okay, next up is that portion of the budget where public comment can be made on items not on the agenda. Those items do need to be within the jurisdiction of the city council. So you have 3 minutes. If you have a comment to make, items not on the agenda, just step to the podium, state your name and address, and as I said, you will have 3 minutes. So any public comments on items not on the agenda? Oh, I'm sorry, I'll come back to you. Did I just get distracted and just skip all those meetings, didn't I?
Hello, Council. Hello, Ms. Mayor. Yes, I've been hearing a lot of complaints about the Pride Week. Myself, I don't like that Pride Week being used on school grounds. A lot of the churches and a lot of parents are concerned about this Pride Week, and I would like to see that completely gone from Lincoln County and Libby. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Any other public comments?
Hello, Mayor, council members. Scott Slauson, 966 Crotto Road. I'd like to complain about the ridiculous stop signs. I know that there was probably some good feedback when you made the decision to put the stop signs in there, but I think there are already laws in place that govern whether or not people stop for pedestrians. I believe pedestrians always have the right of way for other cars. But now the stop signs, they're just popping up all over the place, it seems, and it's going to be in perpetuity for everybody, whether there's anyone else at the intersection or not, forever, 24/7, 365 days a year we have to stop. And it's not just Mineral Avenue. My second That's probably the third worst. The second worst is probably Main and Cedar, up by the radio station. Oh my gosh. Rumor has it that the person who complained about that intersection said, oh, I didn't mean for them to put stop signs on all of those streets coming there. Crazy. You got to slow down just to make that corner. There's no reason for stop signs there. And the worst one, the most ridiculous intersection where there are stop signs, probably has to be it's 8th and Utah. Oh my gosh, if anybody were to ask me, hey Scott, where's the safest uncontrolled intersection in Lincoln County? I'd probably say, you know what, it's probably 8th and Utah. No matter what direction you're coming from, you can see for 50 yards. Now there's 4 stop signs there. What was going on when you made that decision? Were those rowdy Catholics every Sunday? Did they say, oh, we're going to do burnouts and then drag race up to the highway past Rositas? No, we got to put a stop to that. It's nuts, crazy. I'm not expecting you to go through the whole process and remove all the ridiculous stop signs, but please, for the love of God, next time somebody complains about an intersection, don't throw stop signs and taxpayer money at it that way. There are already laws in place about those. This can't be the best way. Give me a call. I'll see if I can find a better solution for you so that everybody doesn't have to stop forever at these crazy intersections. Thank you for letting me vent. I feel better now.
Are there any other public comments? Any other public comments? Any other public comments for items not on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, Rocky Gifford, 25 Pine Haven Road. Yes, the no parking, the 2 limit hour parking in front of businesses. Why ain't that enforced? You know, if you're sitting there for 2 hours, you know, they should be enforced instead of having people sit there all day. I know the city annex building sits there and parks all day, and you know, it should be enforced. There's been a lot of people complaining during special events, like this wood carving. I've talked to a lot of business owners about them not enforcing the law. But some bigger cities, once a business complains, they could come in and hook up and take that car away. And I think that either you enforce it or take those signs down. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Any other public comments? Any other public comments and items not on the agenda? Then I will come back to the council table and pick up Mr. Zimmerman's fire report from the committee reports.
Libby Volunteer Fire Department responded to 10 calls in the month of September 2025, 3 calls in the city, 4 calls in the rural fire district, and 3 calls were outside of the rural fire district. 1 vehicle, 2 structure, 1 grass wildland, 2 mutual aid with Libby ambulance, 3 false alarms, and 1 miscellaneous. They're sitting at a total of 88 calls for 2025.
Thank you. The only other committee that has a report is Parks, and you are on the agenda for tonight. So we will move on to new business. The public again has an opportunity to comment on agenda items under consideration, and each person is again limited to 3 minutes, and it must be the comments must be specific to the topic motion that is under discussion. So our first item under new business is the natural resource damage of asbestos project workshop, and that's Sydney Stewart from that program. If you want to step to the podium, I know you have a slideshow.
Just let everybody know the 85-inch TVs will be coming in here soon. We've got inner parts. So soon we'll have a backlit TV there and then one over here for the meeting, so it'll be a lot easier to see.
Thank you, Mayor Williams and City Council for having us. My name is Sydney Stewart. I'm an environmental scientist with the Montana Natural Resource Damage Program, and I'm the project manager for NRDP's work up in Libby. So we work on both the Libby Asbestos Superfund site and the Libby Groundwater Superfund site. And I'm mostly going to talk about Libby Groundwater tonight, but I do want to give a quick update on Libby Asbestos. So just a really brief background on Libby Asbestos. In the W.R. Grace bankruptcy, the state received $18.5 million for restoration of natural resources injured by the vermiculite mine. In 2024, the governor signed an interim restoration plan that allocated about $2 million to restoration projects in Lincoln County. And there's an opportunity for additional restoration projects to be funded coming up in 2026 or 2027. So I'm up here with Brian Bartkowiak, who's our environmental program manager, and then Andrew Pfeiffer is another project manager with our program. And on Wednesday, we're going to be holding a workshop where we'll talk about what this money can be spent on, how you can apply for funds, and how projects will be evaluated. And we'll be in the Ponderosa room here. So we will have a quick presentation at the beginning, but we're hoping to mostly have discussion and dialogue about project ideas and how projects will be evaluated. We'll be here from 4 to 6:30, so if you can't join us for the whole time, that's fine. Stop in when you can, and we'd love to talk about any project ideas.
On the side there.
Oh, am I pointing? Where should I be pointing?
No, it should point try over here. It was working, we tried it out.
It sat and paused too long.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Let me just read. It might have decided too long because I started earlier. Yeah. Will the controller work on that one? Will the controller work yet?
Yeah.
There it goes. It was just tired. You guys still
As
see?
I said, it sat too long
Okay.
and paused. So.
Okay, perfect. So now I want to switch gears to Libby Groundwater. I'm going to try and keep this brief and pretty high level, but I do really love to get into these. So if you have any questions about any of this or want to talk more, feel free to get in touch.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It stopped sharing. I'm sorry. Technical difficulties.
This is Farishing, except we need Gary.
How's that?
Got it.
There we go. All right.
Okay.
We're good.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So I have my contact information up here. I also have it at the end of the presentation, and I have a bunch of cards. So if you want to get in touch, let me know. Okay, so I'm going to talk about NRDP, who we are and what we do, and then about Libby Groundwater and the natural resources at the site. And then I'll talk about our assessment process and how people can get involved. So the Natural Resource Damage Program, or NRDP, it works on behalf of the governor, who's the trustee of natural resources for the state of Montana. And we work under natural resource damage provisions in federal Superfund law, or CERCLA, and the state equivalent, which is SECRA, and also the Oil Pollution Act, which is not relevant to Libby, but we do have some oil spill sites on Yellowstone. These provisions allow trustees to recover damages for injuries to natural resources caused by the release of a hazardous substance. Our work can be pretty jargon heavy, so I just want to define a couple terms that we use a lot. So natural resources are probably pretty self-explanatory, but we're talking about any resources that are held in trust for the people of Montana. And then we also talk about natural resource services, which are the physical and biological functions of a resource. So fish would be a resource, and then fishing is a service provided by that resource. More relevant to Libby, groundwater is a resource, and drinking water is a service provided by that resource. A resource is injured when there's an observable or measurable change in a resource or an impairment of a service. And so if groundwater is contaminated such that it can no longer be used as drinking water, that's an impairment of the service, and that's an injury. And then when we talk about damages, we're talking about a sum of money. So funds that the state receives in compensation for those injuries that are then used to restore the resources. So I just want to go back to that statement, having defined some of these terms. Trustees can recover damages for injuries to natural resources caused by the release of a hazardous substance. And hazardous substance is important here too. We work under Superfund law, so we can't recover for every injury to a resource. It has to be related to the release of a hazardous substance. These damages must be used to restore, replace, rehabilitate, or acquire the equivalent of the injured resources. And the objective is to restore those resources to their baseline conditions, which is the condition they would be in had the release never occurred. So I just want to talk a little bit about the difference between remedy and restoration. I think when people think of Superfund sites, they typically think of the cleanup or the remedy. And restoration is related to that, but it is a separate process. And I think this figure helps illustrate that. On the y-axis here, we have the condition of a resource. So I'll use groundwater as an example. And then on the x-axis, we have time. So we have groundwater at its baseline condition. And then when there's a release of a hazardous substance, that the condition of that resource is degraded. And if no action is taken, it'll continue in that degraded state. But typically at Superfund sites, there is a cleanup that's done by EPA or overseen by EPA and DEQ. And that resource is cleaned up to a risk-based cleanup level, with the goal being that it's protective of human health and the environment. So that cleanup can restore the resource to some degree, but generally not back to its baseline condition. That's not the goal of remedy. That is where, sorry for getting to click through these, that's where NRDP and restoration comes in. So the goal of restoration is to make the public whole. So both with respect to the difference between that risk-based cleanup level and the baseline condition, but also for the entire time that the resource was injured and people were unable to use it. One thing I want to note for Libby groundwater, CERCLA Superfund law was enacted in 1981, and so trustees can't recover for any injuries prior to 1981. The baseline condition of that resource is still set pre-release. Even if the release happened prior to 1981, we just can't recover for that time between the release and 1981. So when there's a release of a hazardous substance, there's a remedy or a cleanup, and that follows a specific process. Again, it's overseen by EPA and DEQ, and they have certain steps that they follow: site investigation, a remedial investigation, and feasibility study, a cleanup plan with a record of decision and a consent decree, and then implementation of that plan. And similarly, restoration has its own process that we follow. This is the NRDAR process, or Natural Resource Damage Assessment and Restoration. And what we're looking at is what resources have been injured and what will it take to restore them. And again, that's overseen by natural resource trustees, in our case, NRDP acting on behalf of the governor. So I'll talk about this process as we get into Libby groundwater and kind of let you know where we're at with Libby groundwater. Just a little bit of background on the site. It's a former wood treating site and lumber mill. The wood treating operations were done by J. Neal's Lumber and St. Regis Paper Company, but through mergers and acquisitions, the liability is now with International Paper. Throughout the wood treating operations, there were spills of wood treating fluids that contaminated soils and seeped into the groundwater. And the main hazardous substances on the site are now pentachlorophenol, or PCP, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs. Other contaminants of concern are benzene, arsenic, and dioxins and furans in groundwater and soil. So the first step in the natural resource damage process is the pre-assessment phase. And in this phase, we'll evaluate certain criteria to determine whether it makes sense to proceed with a formal assessment. I'm not going to read all of these conditions, but basically we're looking at, has a release of a hazardous substance occurred, and is it a sufficient amount to cause injury to natural resources? So in October of 2024, we finalized the pre-assessment screen, and we determined that these conditions have been met and it does make sense to proceed with a formal assessment. As part of this process, we had to invite International Paper to participate in the assessment, which they ultimately declined to do. So the pre-assessment phase is done. We're now in the assessment phase. And in the assessment phase, we prepare an assessment plan, and then we implement that plan and conduct the assessment. So the plan lays out the methods we plan to use for determining the injury, quantifying the injury, and then determining the damages. And that plan goes out for public comment before it's finalized, so that's where we are right now. And then once we get public comment and finalize the plan, we'll begin to implement it and do the assessment. So again, I'm going to try to keep this pretty high level, but happy to answer any questions or follow up later. The assessment plan starts with injury determination, and this is where we determine which resources have been injured. And the NERDA regulations define what an injury is. So an example of one definition of injury is if you have groundwater that's potable before a release and then not potable after a release, that meets the definition of injury. So we'll use the definitions in regulations to determine which resources have been injured. And we also have to establish the exposure pathway. So how did the contaminants come to be located in these resources? For Libby groundwater, we'll be focusing on groundwater. But we do have surface water and biological resources as a little more of an unknown, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. Once we determine which resources have been injured, we move to the quantification stage, where we look at the extent of the injury, and that's both in time and in space. So first we have to define what the baseline condition is, and then we look at, for groundwater, like how big is the plume and what has it looked like over time. So we'll look both like backwards, what does it look like since 1981, and then forwards, how long is it going to take to be cleaned up. We use existing data where possible, but sometimes we pull in literature or reasonable assumptions, or sometimes we go out and collect additional data if there's not enough to do the assessment. And then once we've defined the injury and quantified it, we move to damage determination, which is where we determine the appropriate compensation for that injury. For groundwater, some methods that we can use for this are a resource equivalency analysis, or a REA, or economic valuation. I won't get into what these are, but I'm happy to if anyone wants to. So to do the assessment, we need data. We try to use existing data wherever possible. And for this site, there is a good amount of existing data around the groundwater, so we anticipate being able to use existing data. Where we see some potential data gaps are related to PFAS, or per and polyfluoral alkylated substances. In EPA's 5-year review, they noted that it's possible there's PFAS at the site, and this is an emerging contaminant and a newly listed hazardous substance, so it hasn't been delineated at this site, but we'll incorporate whatever is found by EPA's investigation into our assessment. And then the Kootenai River, there's been some more recent data showing the plume near the Kootenai River, and we'll use existing data as much as possible to see if there's potential for those contaminants to have made it to the river and impacted surface water or sediments or biological resources. And if we don't have enough existing data for any of this work, we might need to go out and collect more data. But any additional data that we do collect, we'll write a work plan and an associated quality assurance project plan, and that work plan in QAP will go out for public comment as well. So again, we're in the assessment phase right now. I just want to talk really briefly about where we'll go after this. So the post-assessment phase. So once we complete the assessment, we'll recover the damages from International Paper. And then any settlement agreement that the state enters with IP will be subject to public comment. And before any money that's recovered is spent on restoration projects, we'll write a restoration plan, and that will go out for public comment. So there's additional periods for public comment, both on any funds the state might receive and how those funds are spent. Some examples of how dollars can be spent on groundwater projects. Things like water conservation, so replacing leaky pipes or leaking water tanks, as well as groundwater protection, like preserving areas of high groundwater infiltration. There's a lot of other examples, but those are some easy ones. So getting money, spending money, that's quite a ways off. This is a long project, but just wanted to give you a little glimpse of where we're hoping to go with this. All right, so our assessment plan is out for public comment. Comments are due October 30th. You can comment on whatever you want, but just so for some ideas, if you have any comments on the scope of the assessment, are we looking in the right places? Are we looking at the right resources? If you have any information that you think would be useful for us in doing the assessment, and then if you read through it and you have thoughts on the methods we're proposing, we're happy to hear that. And we can also use example projects. So some of those valuation methods that I was talking about, we need example projects that have quantifiable benefits to groundwater and costs, and we can incorporate those into the assessment. So we don't have money to spend right now, but if you have project ideas, we're happy to hear them. And we've gotten a couple from the city already, and hopefully we'll continue to have those conversations. All right, so comments again. Comments have to be received by October 30th to be considered. You can email them to us, nrdp@mt.gov, or send them in the mail. Please use the subject line Libby Groundwater Draft Assessment Plan. Sometimes we have multiple things out for public comment, so we need to know which one you're talking about. And then we have our website up here where you can find the plan as well as additional information about what we're doing, both with Libby Asbestos and Libby Groundwater. And don't be afraid to get in touch. I'm happy to chat, email, phone call, whatever. And hopefully we'll see you Wednesday. So that's all I have. Happy to take questions on either.
Okay. Does council have any questions?
Just one.
Okay.
When you're talking about the groundwater, then you guys are talking about the upper and lower aquifer then?
We are, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? I know that this is a long process. From the time you first started, I think a year ago in July, when it first came up for conversation, and haven't heard much about it or anything at all in the meantime. So I know that it just chugs along.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a while to get things approved to go out for public comment, so I don't want to commit to anything until I knew that we had it ready. But yeah, I think it'll probably be quiet for a little while. We'll get public comment, and then we'll put out the final plan with a document that responds to all public comments that we receive, and then it'll probably be quiet again for a while while we're looking at the data and doing the assessment.
Okay, thank you. I am going to take public comments for it, but you can sit down unless you really feel you need to clarify something, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So are there any public comments on this presentation? Any public comments?
Can that include questions?
The questions would be best addressed, just catch them. Tony?
I just have a question.
Oh, okay. Are you interested in answering some questions, Sydney?
I'm happy to.
Okay. So, sure, go ahead. You step back up. Tony, your question?
My question was, after this first public comment period, then you're going to recover damages from IP. Is that a certainty, or is that just your plan?
Sure, yeah. I probably can't say that that's a certainty, but that's our plan, yeah. And that's also why it takes a while, not an easy process.
Okay, thanks.
Tina?
Some public comments that you're asking by October 30th, obviously they would be on your assessment plan, but we think, but you also, I think I heard you say it could be on any plan.
Oh, well, yeah, we're asking for public comment on the assessment plan. I just meant any comments you have on the assessment plan are welcome. And then, yeah, you don't have to stick to the examples I gave for what to comment on. Does that help?
Yeah. So it's not, as an example, it's not relevant to put public comments on how natural resources were damaged. You don't hear examples of that at this phase. It's not useful to you.
If you have information about impacts to natural resources, you're welcome to provide that. Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we looking at the right resources? Are we looking at the right?
Okay. Any other comments? Any other public comments? Public comments? And thank you very much. And I know that Judy did send that out, and I did pass along that report to the council. And any other way we can help you get that information out, we will be happy to do so. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Move on to Mr. Chisholm, and Mr. Chisholm was interrupted in the last meeting when we were talking about the legal services agreement regarding AFFS and PFAS of the litigation services. So if you would like to kind of backtrack and remind us of what you were saying and what we need to know on that. And I did, yes, okay. Mr. Chisholm?
Yeah. Thank you. So, this falls kind of naturally. There's currently federal multi-district litigation regarding PFAS contamination. As we just heard, PFAS detection can be elusive and difficult. Sam has told us over the last few months we've had positive reports and that we haven't had a high level of PFAS reported in the testing that was done. I think it was in July. However, because it's difficult to ascertain and requires a series of tests from various geographical locations to be accurate, even though we currently don't have a registered PFAS issue, I would recommend that we enter into this agreement with these law firms that are handling the multi-district litigation. And they are handling it on a contingent basis, which means we pay them no attorney's fees, unless they recover some sort of monetary compensation for the city of Libby, in which case they would take their portion, their percentage. If we find that through extensive testing there are no PFAS issues, then we can be dismissed from the claim if we wish to be, or we can, just hang in there until the end of it. If at the end of the litigation there still is no PFAS difficulty, then again we can withdraw from the litigation and have incurred no fees in the process. But because this is multi-district litigation, what that means, it's kind of like a class action. So there's so many of these cases going on across the country that there has to be some order imposed on them. So what they do is they assign all of these cases to a few judges in a district to handle them from across the country, so that we don't have, hundreds or thousands of different cases going in different courts. But because of that, they've instituted a deadline of December 31st. And so if we don't join this group by December 31st, we will have waived our right to bring the claim. And if we discover some contamination a year from now or whenever, we will be barred from seeking remedy. I think my understanding, having spoken with a few people across the state, is there are other municipalities that are in the same position as us. They've had recent PFAS testing that showed that there was no issue that needed remedied. However, I think they are joining as well, just because of the elusiveness of this particular test, or maybe all of the similar tests, I'm not sure. Does that make sense? Can I answer any questions?
Does council have any questions you'd like to put forward? There does not seem to be very many questions from the council. So,
okay.
Sorry.
Sure.
I thought we saw the draft agreement already.
We did, but his explanation was interrupted, and so I didn't want to move forward with it until we had the full explanation. Okay? If we want to discuss it and are in agreement to move forward with approving this, you can say so now. So.
Yeah, I think we should bring it forward for vote.
I think so as well.
Agree.
Okay. Okay, it seems to be the consensus of the council at this point that we will move it forward for approval at the next meeting. So, did you have other comments to make? I will open it up for public comments. So are there any public comments on this this action we are looking to take? Any public comments? Public comments? So seeing none, Mr. Chisholm, thank you, and we'll start the process of getting this on for approval at the next meeting.
Super, thank you.
Thank you. So the next item is they approve the committee's recommendation for the location of the wings, metal wings that have been down at Police Officers Park.
Yes. Yeah, the Parks Committee met, I think it was at the end of August was the last time we met, and we decided on a location, but we didn't have a specific spot in the location, so it's near the alternative school, and the spot that they approved with their board is in that park. I don't know what it's called, Fish Park, Fish Slide. You guys know what I'm talking about, downtown? So there's like a big white maintenance building there with a Yeti. They're gonna move the Yeti. The wings can go up against that wall. Be a good spot. It's near where Todd Burgett used to teach and all that.
Yeti or
I don't know. A Sasquatch.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay.
So we were hoping that you guys would agree that we can move it there, and then we can get it put in cement before it freezes.
Okay. Does anybody make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the location for the wings for the home.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other comments regarding this? Okay, then I'd open it up for I'm sorry.
I just have, was Mrs. Burgett, was she involved in any of this? To know where they are, and did we ever locate the plaque that supposedly was held by the previous counselor to go with the wings?
I
There
don't
were the
know about
remembrance
that.
to go with?
Yeah.
As I understand it, Zach has the plaque.
He does have it?
He has the plaque. Yes.
Is that going to go with the wings then?
I would expect it to go on
Okay.
the foundation of the wings.
Okay.
Okay? So
Thank
any
you.
other comments or questions? Any public comment on the location of these wings? Public comment? Public comment? So all in favor of the motion to move the wings into the location at the near the alternative school?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will set that in motion so they can get set before winter sets in. That brings us to the next item of approving signing of the resolution to authorize submission of the CDBG application, and the first page of the uniform application and the Montana CDBG certification of an application for the first in Montana lift station. That was a mouthful.
Yes,
This is the final stage. I know of the public hearing we had a couple of weeks ago. TD&H has been working diligently on putting this application together, and they did supply us all that information to look at. So
I'll make a motion to approve the signing of the resolution to authorize submission to CBG application.
Second.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? So any public comments or are there any public comments on this resolution to sign this application? Public comments. It is the final step of funding for the first in Montana lift station so that we can move forward with that getting replaced. It's a critical part of our infrastructure, and it is reached an unsafe condition, and so we really want to move forward with getting it replaced. So any public comments? Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? A motion carries. That we will get the paperwork signed tomorrow and get it back. Brings us to claims received to date.
Make a motion to approve all claims received to date.
Second.
Okay. Any questions about this claims? Questions? Any public comments regarding the claims? I will remind you that if you are interested in seeing what the claims, that is the bills that we pay, you just need to come in on Monday, the day of the meeting, and we will be able to show them to you. They're available for the public to go through. If you have questions, one of us will explain them. So any public comments? Public comments? Then all in favor of the claims?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Claims are approved. So it moves us to approval of business license applications received to date. Allcom Electric Incorporated, Atlas HVAC LLC, CNC Mechanical Incorporated, KIF Services LLC, Robin's Nest, and Roxanne Benefield.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Is Robin's Nest, I noticed there was a note on it to hold.
That was waiting for Walter and Steve to sign off on it.
Okay, so do you want to pull
for
that one?
Airbnb.
I think the Department of Health needs to sign up.
She did
Okay.
sign it. Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to pull that one?
Well, I guess I would make a motion that we approve the business's license subject to final approval from the entities that are missing signatures.
Okay. Have a second. Okay. Any other questions or comments on these business licenses? Okay. Any public comments on the business license? Public comments? Public comments? Then all in favor of the motion to approve the business license?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Those business licenses are approved, which brings us to the unfinished business. And that first item of that business is the request from the Chamber of Commerce to have a long-term lease on the property that they are currently occupying. And so I'm going to go back through, we've kind of received a lot of pieces of paper regarding this. So at the last meeting, we had the original lease. We had the lease from the current lease, and we had some the proposed lease that the chamber wanted us to look at. Since then, Mr. Chisholm has put together the lease as he sees it needing to be worded, and that was sent out to you today and put on the desk for a printed copy. Okay? In this process, there were some questions raised about the ability of someone to own a building on property that they don't own. And so one of the two examples that were brought forward was the search and rescue is owning buildings on city property when they don't own that property, and the other was the airport. So we pulled those two documents, the deed to the airport and the lease to the search and rescue. Okay? So that's what all these pieces of paper that you have. Any questions so far? Okay, so what we are currently looking at and what is on the table at the moment is the lease that Mr. Chisholm put together, and it is this agreement lease is made in blank lines. It looks this one. Okay? Okay. So that we're all looking at the same piece of paper. And with that said, Miranda would like to come forward and make some comments.
Miranda Cravens, 905 West 9th Street, sorry. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I wanted to add a little bit of information from our last discussion, just in case it answers any of your questions. We've been looking really closely at what needs to be done with the building. We received quotes from Byron O'Glennis for both repairing the building and rebuilding it. And it ends up that it turns out to be more feasible in the long run to completely rebuild the building. We started with Byron just as a starting point to kind of gauge what the numbers will be. He's an active chamber member, so we would like to work with a chamber member, but we will open it up to for a bid to other chamber members if we get to that point. The board did want me to mention if the city prefers, we'd be open to including language in an agreement that says the chamber owns the building, but if the chamber ever discontinues or decides to move, ownership of the building would revert to the city for a set amount. We want to be flexible and fair while making sure we can move forward with the improvements. And our goal really is just to fix up the property, ideally through a rebuild, but we want to continue to welcome visitors and support our local businesses in a space that reflects Libby's pride and is hospitable. That said, if we're not able to confirm the ownership and can't qualify for the funding of the building, we may be forced to look for another location, which is the bottom of the list on things that we would want to do. This building has a lot of history tied into it with the chamber and with Libby too, so we would hate to lose that, and all of the other chambers in the state are very jealous of our location, so I will mention that. So in order to stay on track with the grant process, we will need to move forward with a decision by November 1st if possible. We really just want to find a way to work together to make a decision, but doing so that aligns with the Montana law. So I know that is important. So.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Chisholm for any statements he wants to make regarding this issue. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And you might want to take a seat. I might be a minute. Yeah, so we have kind of a couple, well, we've got a dozen competing issues here, but a couple of them are primary, maybe. I think there is not a clear understanding of the historical relationship with the chamber as a tenant or owner or whatever on the premises. And so I don't know that it's very useful to delve into that very much. I'm not sure we're going to come up with the documents or the notes from the phone call that explain to us what the agreement was a million years ago. An issue here is, to some extent, it's semantics. The chamber uses the language, they want to own the building. It's very unusual and difficult to have a situation in which one party owns property, but another party owns a structure on that property. It's unusual for a lot of reasons. If there's some dispute between the owner of the real property interest and the owner of the building, it's awfully tough to pack up a building and move it somewhere else without causing damage to the alienability of the property, etc. So typically we understand that structures are a part of the real estate on which they reside and are owned by the owner of the real estate. When parties want to enter into a relationship where one party has control over a building but not the entire lot without a sale, we do something called a ground lease, and I've done a few of these in the past. One was for a bank that chose to build a large, expensive structure on a piece of property it didn't own. And so the parties entered into a ground lease, and kind of the terms of a ground lease are, they're usually for a long term, 20 years, successive 20-year terms, something like that, so that the person building the building has some ability to control, the premises for 20 or 40 or 60 years or whatever the parties deem is appropriate. The typical provision in a ground lease is that any improvements will revert to the owner of the real property at the termination of the lease, just like, most leases are in any situation. The exception to this is that I learned today that the chamber might be considering using a modular structure. So
and that has gone by the boys' side. They're now looking at a stick build. Sorry.
It is a stick build.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. If I can just, for 15 seconds,
I'm sorry.
to clear that up.
Sure.
Montana has different laws for modular buildings. If you move one on to the premises, until you put it on a permanent foundation and you apply to the county to have it affixed to the real property, it remains a piece of personal property, just like you put a trailer or a tent or a VW bus on the property. But you can make it become part of the property. But if that's no longer one of the issues, then we can move on. So those are kind of the legal parameters. And I guess one more practical that kind of fits in with the legal is, again, imagine you build a stick-built structure on a foundation. It's not meant to be picked up and moved somewhere. And you enter into an agreement that says, if this lease terminates for whatever reason, the person in possession of the building gets to rip it up and move it somewhere. Well, I mean, that's going to be awfully difficult to do without a lot of damage to a lot of people and property. Or it gives them the right to sell that building to some other individual or entity. Typically, a landlord, anybody who owns the real estate, or the lessor, wouldn't want to enter into an agreement that allows their tenant to decide who's going to take over that building, be able to have some sort of unassailable interest in that structure. So legally it would be very, very difficult, particularly now that the modular is out of the running, it would be very, very difficult to come up with some sort of scheme that would separate the ownership of the lot and the building. And I should say, if you look at those documents that were provided earlier today, it's not accurate that the city owns the airport land and the county owns the buildings. If you look at that deed, it actually indicates that the city and county own that property jointly. They are joint owners, and therefore, there isn't a relationship in which somebody owns the ground and somebody owns the building. And feel free to interrupt me here at any point if I'm not making sense. But so with that as the background, how do you resolve this? Well, there's a few ways. One is a standard ground lease. And a ground lease says that we're going to rent this property or lease this property to you for a period of time. And you're going to build a structure if you choose to. And if you do, at the end of this lease, we will own that structure. And that's why typically a ground lease is made for 20 or 50 or more years, to protect the builder of the premises. There could be a provision, and I think the Chamber has brought this up recently, there could be a provision inserted that if the lease were to terminate and the Chamber were no longer leasing the property, then the city would pay it for any improvements that it had made, or maybe a pro rata share of any improvements it had made. That's something that the parties could negotiate, and that's merely a matter of negotiation. The attorneys could get it done. It's just a matter of what anybody's willing to pay. And you keep in mind as you're reviewing that in a typical ground lease situation, it's a commercial operation where the individual that's building the property is also paying a lease payment on a monthly or annual basis. In this case, I think the agreement, as discussed, has been kind of a de minimis lease payment on an annual basis. So perhaps the point of negotiation is if you're not going to pay to lease the land, then perhaps we shouldn't have to pay to recover the improvements you make to the land. Is that useful? Are there questions I could answer? Does that kind of frame the issue sufficiently, or?
Oh, I think it frames it very well. I'm assuming that we would also write a letter of support for this grant for the chamber to submit, and in that letter, we can attest to our commitment to the long-term lease that they would submit with it, as sort of add, credibility. But
yeah, in my understanding, and I've only had a couple of communications with the chamber over the last few days, but my understanding is the grant doesn't require them to have ownership of either the real property or the building, so we aren't dealing with a grant requirement. But that's been a brief conversation, so I think maybe the chamber wants to check that out more fully to make sure that's accurate.
I believe Kim Peck answered that question, and she wasn't sure. She was under the understanding that it wasn't required. We did reach out to the grant coordinator, and we should have an email back by tomorrow that I can share with Mr. Chisholm.
So were you able to hear Miranda's comment?
I was, thank you.
Okay.
What grant is it?
It's the Montana Pilot Community Tourism Grant.
Okay. Any other council questions or comments? Melissa?
Well,
I couldn't tell if you were, okay, Brian?
No, thank you very much for all the information, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay. Ethan? No? Kristen?
Well, I think in light of the impending deadline, the 1st.
We would like to have an answer by the 1st to move forward.
Okay.
The project. Yes, it's due by December 31st.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the grant's not due November 1st.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Hugh, do you have a comment?
Not a question, but a comment. Would this be very similar to the lease we have with the Cross Country Ski Club?
Right.
They build buildings on our property that if they convert the buildings are ours. I mean, would it be very similar to that?
It's pretty much simple. It's similar to all the leases that are being put in place at the moment.
We're trying to modernize.
We're trying to monitor and standardize those leases, yes. So that it follows the same pattern. Okay? Did you have any other comments to make, Miranda?
That's all.
Okay. Are there any public comments? Public comments? Public comments? Okay. Then, Mr. Chisholm, did you have other comments to make?
No, thank you for the time.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions. It's kind of complicated, so
Okay.
let me know if I can help.
I think we probably need to take all this under advisement and see what we can work out. You had one more comment?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Rocky?
Yeah, Rocky Gifford, 25 Pine Haven Road. How much property out there do you guys own?
We're talking about the Chamber of Commerce building.
Yes.
It's the tan octagon type shaped building, the
Yeah.
visitor center by Rosar's.
Yeah.
If I was correct.
And Mr., you have to address your comments this way. And Chamber does not own any property there. It's all city park.
Okay, that's all, that's
Okay.
the question I wanted.
Okay? Any other council comments or questions?
No, I mean, I think the proposed lease looks great. I think, if we wanted to extend the years, another 10 years, it's a 35-year lease, I'm good with that. Otherwise,
Okay. Okay. Last chance, Mr. Chisholm? Okay, then we will move on to...
I've got nothing. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next topic of conversation. Thank you. The next topic is the Community Development Fund and the grant writer and versus Community Development Coordinator. Gail and I did have another meeting with KRDC and asked them to put together a proposal of how they could access the community development funds to restart their, I will call it dormant, is that
Yes.
organization? And so that is the kind of the question out there right at the moment. Gail, did you have any comments to make?
No.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments regarding community development, the grant writer, community development coordinator? Okay, then we will continue to put that on hold. And that brings us to adjournment.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.